it's time for the college football portion of our show, Sean. And we're going to talk quarterbacks. And we're going to talk about who we kind of predict to be the top 5 quarterbacks in the country next year, and then some guys to keep an eye on, some names to watch going into next season. And so, Sean, it really came from, we got asked a question yesterday in our Friday mailbag about who we thought would be the 5 quarterbacks next year. And it was kind of like, we can name 3, but then it's like, who's coming back and who's transferred. There's a lot of quarterbacks transferring this offseason.
Mm-hmm.
And so it creates a lot of conversation about who's going to be the guy this year. So we decided we are going to do something fun here. And before we get to our mailbag, and we're going to talk about who we think just kind of, it's that way too early top 25 type of thing, right? Which we'll be doing here soon at Irish Breakdown. And so you look at it and say, okay, I think there's 3 that are givens, right? There's Caleb Williams from USC. It's a given. Drake May from North Carolina. That's a given. The only question I have is where to put Drake, because I want to see how that system goes this season, Vince, Sean, you and Vince don't look alike. Sean, and because, there's not the Phil Longo offense anymore. What does it look like? Are they going to put as much? I mean, because his numbers could go down, but his efficiency and his overall play could go up. You know what I mean? Where people are going to look, he didn't throw for 4,000 yards like last year or whatever, but he's a better quarterback, more impactful quarterback. I don't know what their offense is going to look like. And then number 3, I think we both agree on, is Michael Penix, who is not getting nearly enough conversation or enough oxygen in the quarterback room. Now, what we're talking about, Sean, is we're not talking about NFL draft. Right. I don't care about the NFL draft. We're not talking about that, because Hendon Hooker's not going to be a high NFL draft pick, but he was a heck of a college quarterback. We're talking about who the best quarterbacks in college football last year. Michael Penix threw for 4,641 yards, completed 65.3% of his passes, through 31 touchdowns and 8 picks.
Yeah.
He's in, and both of his top 2 receivers, who were both 1,000-yard guys last year, are coming back. So he's in that conversation too. Yeah. So let's talk about that next tier.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're both going to kind of pick 2 sort of the top 5. And then we've got actually, neither of us had the same next 2. Sort of. And you'll understand why when Sean gives us 5.
Right.
And then we've got, so we'll kind of get into it, Sean. So we got Caleb Williams, and that would be my order. Caleb Williams 1, Drake May 2, Michael Penix 3 would be my order.
Yeah.
And I would say that Drake May's closer to Caleb Evans than Michael Penix is to Drake May.
Yeah.
Because the one difference between those 3 is Caleb Williams and Drake May are not only weapons as passers, but they're weapons as runners. And Michael Penix is more of just a chain mover as a runner. I mean, he had like 92 yards rushing. I'm looking at his numbers. He had 92 yards rushing last year, 4 touchdowns. He's a scramble. If it's there, he's going to run and move the chains. He's going to pull it on a read zone and walk into the end zone, that kind of guy. He's not the weapon that those other guys are when you look at like Drake May and when you look at Caleb Williams, Sean. And I don't know if you see it the same way. I'm telling y'all what I think. I look at Drake May, and Drake May can go toe-to-toe numbers-wise with Michael Penix. He threw 38 touchdowns and 7 picks, 66.2% completion rate, and had 4,321 yards last year.
Yeah.
That's pretty darn good, and that's on the same, somewhat on the same wave as what Michael Penix did last year.
And I think Michael Penix had a better overall team.
Agree, especially wide receiver. North Carolina had good receivers, but Josh Downs wasn't healthy all year. Yeah. They both had an 8.4 yards per attempt completion rate, but here's the difference: Michael Penix 92 yards rushing, 4 touchdowns. Drake May 698 yards rushing and 7 touchdowns. He was a much more effective weapon there. And then obviously Caleb Williams last year threw for 4,537 yards, had a 66.6% completion rate, which is so fitting for a USC quarterback. Had 42 touchdowns and 5 picks. I don't think you got that one, Sean. And then you look at it too, 42 touchdowns, 5 picks, but then he had 382 yards rushing and 10 rushing touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
So that to me is what separates those 2 guys from Michael Penix.
Yeah.
Because if Michael Penix is off throwing the ball, your offense struggles.
Yeah.
The top 2 guys are off throwing the ball. Like Caleb Williams didn't rip Notre Dame up throwing the football, even without their top 2 corners or 2 of their top 3 corners being in the game. He did stuff with his legs. His legs killed Notre Dame. So he could still make it. We saw that with Drake May. He could still do things with his legs, even if the pass game wasn't working. If you make the pass game inefficient for Washington, Michael Penix isn't as much of a factor,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that's why it's 1, 2, 3 for me. Let's go with your number 4 quarterback for next year, Sean.
Some people might think it's a cop out, but my number 4 is an unknown.
That's why I kept saying sort of.
And someone comes out of nowhere every year. Drake May came out of nowhere to become a first round guy in the 2024 draft, probably number 1 overall pick, if not the number 2 overall pick. So could it be? I'll just throw some names. You mentioned, could it be JJ McCarthy becoming that dude that now can evolve and allow the Michigan offense to take the next step? Could Joe Milton, who has a world of physical talent, now in his second year with Josh Heupel, being there with Hendon Hooker, getting the win against Clemson in the bowl game, does he put everything together with Josh Heupel in that offense, which that system can produce great quarterback play, right? I thought what Pratt did against USC, right, in a different type of way. What does he do going back to Tulane? It's just a lot of different guys, youngsters coming up. Cade Klubnik, does he take a step, right? Kyle McCord, is he the next dude, right? If early on, we didn't know CJ Stroud after 3 games would even be the starter at Ohio State.
Kyle McCord's thrown a lot more passes coming into this season than CJ Stroud through. CJ Stroud literally as a freshman threw 0 passes. Now he played; he had like a 50-yard touchdown run in a game. But he threw 0 passes as a freshman.
Yeah.
So in that offense, you can't, whether it's him or Devin Brown, you can't. And Devin Brown, I don't think threw any passes this year. Same amount of CJ Stroud.
Yeah.
So it really doesn't matter. Whoever the Ohio State quarterback is going to put up numbers.
Yeah.
The question is, will they be impact numbers?
Yeah.
And that'll determine if they are that guy that you're referring to as that potential breakout guy.
Yeah. So I that's just an example of guys that I think can come up to that next level. It happens every year in college football. Someone's going to do that. And then 5th, I'm going to go ahead and finally throw some flowers at the feet of Bo Nix. Like, I tried to hold off, but he literally, after that devastating loss to Georgia in week 1, he literally anchored that program for Dan Lanning. And he played absolute, man, the matchup between him and Michael Penix Jr., I think in like week 11 last year was absolute. That was amazing, amazing football. And the only reason that Washington came away with the win is that their running game was able to support Michael Penix Jr. a little bit better than the Oregon run game was able to support Bo Nix that day. And then they still had a chance to win. So for me, Bo Nix. Sam Hartman came in at 6 on my list. He came in at number 6. And the reason he came in at number 6, because I don't think Sam Hartman is going to throw for as many yards as he did last year out of necessity.
So is it just a production thing for you then? This is kind of okay.
This is a production
thing.
This is a production thing for me. Sam Hartman, to me, from a production standpoint, yards-wise, is going to take a step back. But I think he's going to take a step forward, touchdowns, and then I think his interceptions come back. So I think he becomes a much more efficient, better-looking quarterback, not only, on the field, but also in the eyes of scouts. But I just think some other guys are going to step up and put up some better stats. I think Joe Milton has the opportunity with the receivers. They lose one big wide receiver, but they have talent coming back. And just that Josh Heupel system, which is pretty much just big plays all over the place. That's what they go for. He's going to have an opportunity with his arm.
Sure.
If he has improved. And, I mean, looking at the way he played against Clemson.
Yeah, he was solid.
He's a much better quarterback than what he was. I can tell you that. So if he takes the next step, I think he has an opportunity to put up some gaudy numbers. I think Jaden Daniels is going to play really good next year.
Yeah.
I really do. So he's definitely going to have a better offensive line.
He's got to be more consistent, but that kind of comes with being in a system for a second year.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to have a better grasp of what they do, what the reads are, the players around you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. I think the Keyshawn Boutte going to the NFL is going to help Jaden Daniels in that offense.
Like it's going to be a much
He was a
better
head
vibe.
case.
Yes.
He was a head case. I mean, it was just like he was that prima donna. He always had to try to make. He was never happy, and you know, and you and I both noticed Brian Kelly's team. Brian Kelly doesn't handle prima donnas very well.
No,
and that's not an insult. He just doesn't want them, and that's the kind of situation that can just completely create toxicity in your room.
mm-hmm.
There's going to be oxygen for the other receivers now. And I'm going to be honest with you, whoever the LSU quarterback is next year, if Jaden Daniels gets hurt or something like that early, I mean, that kid came off the bench and showed, I mean, he's got some skills too.
Yeah.
You know, so they're going Nussmeier, right? And so they're going to have production there no matter who plays. My only concern there is a lot of his production at times was sort of, I don't say hollow production. There were just some times where he put up yards, but they just couldn't put the ball in the end zone, so it really didn't matter what the yards were.
Yeah.
That's going to be something they're going to have to improve upon. But again, that's going into year 2 of the offense. I expect them to be better in that regard.
Yeah.
So I could see that. I could see that. And again, the other thing too is he provides some ability with your legs.
Mm-hmm.
Where Jaden's got to get better is he's got to be more willing. And I don't know if you agree with this or not, Sean. He's got to be more willing, in my view, to use his arm more. And that's going to be the big thing for me, for him, is there were some games where, boy, he looked really good throwing the football.
Yeah.
But then there was games where just like, dude, what? Like if we could see more of the Florida game, from him, well, he's going to be top 5. I mean, because he's got ability.
Yeah.
You know, he ripped Florida apart. But then there's other games where he's either he was so bad against Auburn. You know, in Mississippi State, he wouldn't throw the ball down the field.
Fourth quarter against FSU.
Yeah.
When they got down big.
He was pretty good then. The rest of the game, he's pretty awful.
Right.
Wouldn't throw the ball down the field. He only threw the ball down the field because they had to. You know, so you look at those things, Sean, you're like, boy, if this kid could just be that guy more often, he's got a chance to be a pretty good player.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be that part. And that was an issue he had at Arizona State. But again, there's going to be level consistency next year. I don't think that Brian Kelly's made any changes at the positions that will matter to him. Quarterbacks coach, offensive coordinator, I believe is still Denbrock. I believe that hasn't changed.
Yeah.
And so we'll kind of see how that one goes. And then, so you said Bo Nix is your 5, and then there's an unknown at 4. Let me give you my
unknown. Bo Nix. You know what I struggle with? You know who I struggle with? Because I haven't even mentioned him. I struggle with Jordan Travis.
Yeah,
I really did.
Well, let's go right there. Let's go right there because I'm going to give you my 5, and then we'll talk about some other guys we like. Because that right there, Sean, great segue, by the way, sir. This is why you're a pro. I love doing shows with you. That's my 4.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the thing is based on your criteria, Jordan Travis won't be in here because he's not going to put up monster numbers. You know, Hugo last year, he threw for 3,214 yards, 64% completion rate, 24 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, rushed for 417 yards and 7 touchdowns. Those aren't like knock your socks off numbers.
No.
But here's the thing for me. He was big in big games. Even some of the games they lost, I thought, other than NC State, he played well. He played really well against Wake Forest.
Yeah.
He played really well against Clemson. He didn't play well against NC State. But a lot of quarterbacks didn't play well against NC State last year, if we're going to be honest about it. So to me, it's one of those things, Sean, where I look at him and I say, the reason he's in my top 5 is because he's just such a playmaker. He is just a kid that you look at, Sean, and you're like, man, like this kid he just puts his team on his shoulders.
Yeah.
He makes the plays he needs to make. He's a winner. You know, he's going to take games over. And I actually thought last year, the play calling at times limited him a little bit. I think they need to open it up. And I think that they will this year as they kind of bring a lot of guys back.
Yeah.
And the other thing too, is his production was also hindered at times by the running game. So like you look at the Syracuse game, he ended up going 21 of 23 for 155 yards, 3 touchdowns, only averaged 6.7 per carry or per attempt. But if you look at it, he didn't play a lot in that game because they were all over Syracuse in that game. I mean, they wore Syracuse out. I mean, so a lot of that production was early. And so there were some games like that that kind of stunted his production a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And it was 24-0 at halftime. It was 38-3 or 24-3 at halftime, 38-3 at the end of the third quarter. And so, I mean, the backups threw 8 passes in that game, So I think he's just a winner. I think that their schedule set up nicely to where he's gonna be able to make some plays and get some big wins. And I have him as my number 4 going into the season. So that's but the stats aren't going to be this. I mean, you're going to look at his numbers and compare it to other guys. Like Brennan Armstrong's going to put up probably better numbers in that NC State offense with Robert and I, right? Because he's followed Robert and I to NC State. You may see some other guys, Spencer Rattler maybe puts up numbers. Bo Nix will have better numbers, like just pure raw numbers. Bo Nix will have much better numbers.
Yeah.
And I'm a lot higher on Bo Nix than you are, and you and Ryan are. But if I had to say, if I've got to go win, if I got to go beat Georgia, and you're going to ask me, who do I want a quarterback? I'm like, can I have anybody? No. I have 1 of 2 guys. You can have Jordan Travis or Bo Nix. Before you get the word Nix out of your mouth, I'm telling you I want Jordan Travis.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a knock on Bo Nix. I like Bo Nix. You know this. Because we would have some fun arguments. They weren't real, but they were like, we're after some shows, we would have a Bo Nix battle because I love getting Ryan riled up. He likes to tweak my nerves, and the way I tweak him up is every time Bo Nix plays well, I remind him how much he hates Bo Nix and how good Bo Nix is, and put some respect on Bo Nix's name just to have some fun, right? But I like Bo Nix as a player. I always thought the issue was more Auburn than it was Bo Nix, and we saw that this year. But if I got to go win a game against Georgia, and I can only have one of those 2, I'm taking Jordan Travis. And if I took Bo Nix, his numbers would probably be better. But Jordan Travis is going to make me more winning plays. And that's why Jordan Travis is in my top 5. Because I'm looking at more impact as opposed to just numbers for me personally.
Yeah. I've looked at it, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to do this because there's so many different ways you can do it. I just want to have one way that I'm looking at this, and I'm like, I'm going to look at this from a production standpoint. But it was hard to keep Jordan Travis out of the top 5.
Yeah.
It was hard. Yeah. It was hard because I remember watching this kid in Notre Dame Stadium down big, and he just kept coming. He just kept coming. I'm like, who is this dude? I'm like, knock him down, tackle him. And he just kept coming. And that's what Florida State has, man. They have a battler at quarterback that makes winning plays.
And a lot of weapons coming back next year, man.
Absolutely.
A lot of weapons coming back next year.
I have one of my favorite freshman wide receivers coming in, Hakeem Williams, as well.
Oh, yeah. He's got some – I mean, they're going to have a tall – Hakeem Williams is going to be like their 3rd tallest receiver next year. He's like 6'3", 6'4".
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they're going to be tall. Here's my number 5, Sean. And I broke it all down, and I wasn't sure if he'd be there yesterday when he had the conversation. But as I broke it all down, I'm taking the guy that's been the most productive quarterback in college football the last 2 years. That's returning. That's Sam Hartman. And it's a lot like what I said about Jordan Travis. I agree with you. He's not going to throw for 4,200 yards this next season like he did at Wake Forest in his healthy season. Mm-hmm. And had he played a full season this year, because again, he did not. Sam Hartman did not play a full slate this year. He missed the opener this season because of the medical issue. But he averaged 308 passing yards per game, and they played VMI in the opener. He probably gets close to 300 yards, which puts him at 4,000 again. He's not going to throw for that many yards, I don't think, this year, unless Notre Dame goes too deep into the playoff, right, and plays in the championship game. I just don't see it.
Right.
And so, but I do think he's going to be 3,500 plus. I do think he's going to be 30 touchdowns plus.
Yeah.
Total touchdowns. He may not. I mean, I think he's going to get to 30 passing, but I could see a scenario where he has 25 to 28 just because, we need some big play receivers to step up for Notre Dame, right?
Absolutely.
And so will they have those 60-yard touchdowns, or will they have a 50-yard touchdown or 50-yard pass that they get caught at the 8, right? Or tackled at the 8? Where the pass game kind of gets you into the red zone, but you're not the home run passing offense like a bunch. And then you're going to run it in, right? So I could see his touchdown numbers being down, but I'm just kind of projecting like 3,500 and 30. Yeah. And then, 4 to 5 rushing touchdowns, off some read zones type of things. So, and I could also see a scenario where his touchdowns are down because when they do get in the red zone, they bring in Tyler Buckner to be the package quarterback or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think the completion percentage is going to jump up 2 to 3 percentage points, and I think the impact is going to be there. I think he's going to have some big games and big moments this year because they're
Mm-hmm.
going to need him to, and he's going to go toe to toe with Caleb Williams this year in Notre Dame Stadium. He's going to go toe to toe with Brennan Armstrong this year. He's going to go toe to toe with Riley Leonard this year, who's a guy that I like a lot at Duke.
He could be that unknown.
Yeah,
He could be one
could
of those
be.
unknowns.
He could be.
Yeah.
My only concern is now he isn't an unknown anymore,
No.
and he doesn't have the weapons around him. Like, let's just say hypothetically, Riley Leonard would have jumped in the portal and come to Notre Dame. Dude, I'd be so fired up right now. I'd be as fired up as I am about Sam Hartman because he's a heck of a player, and he'd have weapons around him, right? He's a really good football player. But, you know, you look at it, he's going to have a lot of those, whoever the Ohio State quarterback is. But no matter who that is, that moment's going to be huge. And so when I look at this football team, Sean, and I look at Sam Hartman, if Notre Dame is as good as I think they're going to be this year, he's going to have big moments and big games. And you look at the quarterbacks he's going to be dueling with this year, another Phil Dracovic battle.
Yeah.
It's, you know, Cade Klubnik. There's going to be some of those big battles to kind of have his moment. And I think the receiving core fits him, what he likes to do well. He likes to throw the ball deep. He likes to throw it over the middle. He's going to be more of a pocket quarterback as opposed to that mesh that takes you to the line. He's going to have a run game that can protect him. I think the numbers, the efficiency is going to be through the roof is kind of how I see his numbers. I think, you know, I'm going to pull up his numbers here real quick. See, he was 8.6 yards per attempt this year. Just pretty good when you can, if you know that offense, you know that that's pretty good. 8.6. Wake Forest ranked 12th in the nation this year in efficiency, passing efficiency. I mean, yards per attempt. I think at Notre Dame with that run game, I think he's going to be up in around 9. I really do.
Yeah.
And so that's why and 9 would get you like in the top 5. So when I look at it, Sean, that's kind of why I feel like he's going to be in my top 5. Now, it was not easy. But it's just there's just so many different question marks with so many of the other quarterbacks coming back that's really what kind of did it in for me. The other part of it too is we saw this Notre Dame offense, because here's the thing you could say, well, yeah, you may what makes you think that being in this offense is going to allow them to be more efficient? Well, it's just what we've seen from this offense.
Yeah.
You know, when Jack Cohn had time to throw last year, I mean, this was Notre Dame's yards per attempt in games where I felt Jack Cohn got time to throw for the most part. 10.5 yards per attempt against Florida State, 8.8 against Toledo, 8.8 against North Carolina, 9.3 against Navy, 11.6 against Georgia Tech, and 9.5 against Stanford. That was Jack Cohn, right? And so, I mean, we're going to see a lot more of those type of games, in my opinion, this year. And Notre Dame's not a huge RPO screen team, which can drag down that yards per attempt a little bit. It's going to be more, 65 to 67% with hitting some balls down the field, hitting balls over the middle, hitting more crossers, overs, things like that. Wheels, things that Tom Reese likes to do. And when they do hit the backs, they're going to go for more yards per catch than you normally expect. So those are the reasons that I have Sam Hartman in my top 5, Sean. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
No, I understand. He was at 6 for me. And the only reason he got bumped down to 6 is because I just went at the history of college football, and there's always one guy, one unknown that just jumps up into the top 5 that you didn't expect. And it's usually like a redshirt freshman or a guy that's been there for a year or two, and then all of a sudden, here he comes. It was CJ Stroud, and then it was Bryce. Didn't play, all of a sudden, here he comes. So I don't see anybody on the depth chart for Alabama that can do that this year, in my opinion. So we'll see. Does Devin Leary, come back to form?
Right. At Kentucky. And the expectation is that the guy that was the OC 2 years ago that kind of allowed Will Levis to look good, better than he is, in my opinion. Another conversation for another day. Some team's going to regret drafting that guy in the top 5, Sean. I'm just telling you that right now. But Liam Cohen, he's going to be coming back to Kentucky as the OC. It's good OC. He's gonna like Devin Leary. The question I have about him, to your point, is what kind of weapons is he going to have around him? But yeah, you're right. I mean, he was in the top 5 for us last year.
Absolutely.
I mean,
absolutely. So,
yeah.
I mean, and a lot of people wanted him to come to Notre Dame in the portal when he went to the portal. So he's a guy. You mentioned Brendan Armstrong. Like, we know what he did in Virginia before he got injured.
Right.
Does he come back to form
Yeah.
at North Carolina State?
He's going to put up numbers. He's going to put up numbers. I'm not a huge Brendan Armstrong fan. I think he's a system guy that puts up numbers because of the offense and the players around him. I don't think he's a take a game over. Holy crap, this guy carries a team. But he's going to put up. We've seen him in that offense. He's got the same guy running that offense at NC State this year that he had 2 years ago at Virginia. So he's going to put up numbers, in my opinion. And he doesn't strike me as a kid who's will have lost confidence because how bad things were at NC State this past year, in my opinion, either, Sean.
No. So, man, I think just at that, I think he was on track to do this before he got injured with the concussion. I think Dylan Gabriel was going to put up numbers at Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Like, his first 2-3 games were really good. I remember the game he had, the first half he had against Nebraska was just ridiculous. And then he comes back and he gets hurt against Texas. But with that offense and playing in the Pac-12, I can see Dylan Gabriel being productive. Not saying he would be in my top 5, but I can see him having a really productive season. I think the quarterback that's coming back for Kansas State, not a pure pocket quarterback, but he's a tough Jordan Travis like. He makes winning plays. I think he's going to have a really good season. So,
well, and then there's some of the transfers, Sean.
Yeah,
that's the other thing. And I did want to point this out about Sam Hartman. So Notre Dame's running backs last year averaged 10.5 yards per reception. Wake Forest averaged 8.1. So again, that's the thing is Notre Dame's running backs provide a lot more big play ability out of the backfield. And all 3 of them had long receptions this year. Logan had one. We saw that in the bowl game.
Yeah.
Audric had a few, like 30-plus yard, and then, of course, Tyree. So what's funny is Tyree had the lowest yards per catch of the group. That was because of the 75-yard in the bowl game. You take that out, and then Logan's the lowest there. But still, but that's what you're going to get from that group. The portal kids are what really fascinate me because who of that hits? I mean, you've got Spencer Sanders going to Ole Miss. How does he take Delane's offense? They had a ton of portal kids show up. Phil Jurkovec, does he bounce back playing with the OC that he had at BC? Right? Because he's going to have the OC back that he was really successful with at Boston College. Is he healthy? Is his head straight? I don't know. Devin Leary, you mentioned. Brendan Armstrong, you mentioned. Graham Mertz. Was Graham Mertz just a talented kid that? No. Let me make my points. Was Graham Mertz? He's got a big arm, but was the issue Wisconsin or is the issue Graham Mertz? Some people argue it's the offense. I personally think it's both. You know what I mean? But now he gets his chance, right? You look at other guys, DJ Uiagalelei at Oregon State. I think that's going to be good for him. You look at Tanner Mordecai going to Wisconsin, running Phil Longo's offense. Does that going to work better than I think it's going to work? So there's going to be there's going to be a lot of quarterbacks that have played a lot of football in college football this year, and a lot of guys putting up numbers in some of these offenses. Who emerges as the game winners, the guys that can really be the money players is the way to put it, right? Who are the guys that are just they're just pump up the stats, right? They're just stat sheet guys, and who are the guys that are winners? That's going to be the interesting thing about this year, Sean, is who that, and Spencer Rattler, you mentioned Michael Pratt. I know people that like the Tungavaloa kid at Maryland. They think he's a really good player. He's going to have some weapons. There's going to be a lot of J.J. McCarthy you mentioned earlier. There's going to be a lot of potential. There's a lot of guys that could jump into that unknown one for you, Sean. And I think that's where Sean's coming from is that, who of that group who is the redshirt freshman that we didn't see much of that's going to be the next Drake May? Does Dante Moore jump into this top 15 quarterback conversation if he's able to step into the lineup right away at UCLA?
He could.
Right? Here's another one that's going to be very interesting to discuss. Does the presence of Arch Manning ruin Quinn Ewers or finally bring out the best in Quinn Ewers? Right? Does he answer? Does he respond to that challenge of Arch in year 2 in the offense with, okay, I'm ready to take this thing over now? Or does he kind of do what a lot of people think he's going to do, which is kind of fold and not be good? I think Quinn Ewers went from way overhyped to now being dogged too much. And what I mean by that is he was a freshman last year. Let's be honest about that. Yes, I know he spent a year at Ohio State. He didn't play at all, and that was supposed to be his senior year of high school. He was really a freshman last year. There were some other issues going on, some receivers that didn't always have their heads on straight, and some tough losses. And I think the kid kind of just didn't play as well as people thought. But I think that's because people had too high expectations for what he was supposed to be last year. If Quinn Ewers was a 3-star kid that nobody ever heard of, and he did exactly what he did last year, we're saying, hey, this kid had a pretty good rookie year. I want to see what he can do next year, right? But because he was the greatest quarterback ever and the highest grade ever by 247, which was asinine, because how could anyone watch freaking Trevor Lawrence in 2018 and think this kid deserved a higher grade than Trevor Lawrence did? That's stupid, right? But that's the hype that was put on this kid. Right. And then he kind of brought some of that on himself with the whole decision to, graduate early to go to Ohio State so he could take the NIL deal and then transfer to Texas right away. We all saw that coming. Everybody in the world knew he's going to go to Ohio State, get his money, and then leave. Everybody knew that. So he's brought some of this on himself. Does he grow up or not? Does he answer the test that Arch is going to give him or not? Because here's the thing that we can both agree on, Sean. That kid has one of the biggest arms in college football. I mean, he's got a Josh Allen type arm, in my opinion. Just power, effortless. The question for me is, this is $1 million arm. What is this and what is this? That's the question that I have.
That's the question, yeah.
And if these things get answered, then all of a sudden he becomes a guy that's going to put up a lot of numbers in that offense.
Yeah.
But I'm not putting money on him going one way or the other, Sean. It's an unknown. But that's what fascinates me about quarterback play in college football this year. The transfers, the young kids that could break out, who, like you said, who's going to be the Drake May? Who's going to be the Devin Leary, the guy that's been injured a bunch that breaks out like Devin Leary did in 2021? You know what I mean? Sorry, Sean. Go ahead.
No, we haven't even mentioned Drew Aller.
Or Cade Klubnik.
Or Cade Klubnik.
Klubnik. Could they be the Drake May? That's a great point, Sean, because Drew Aller's going to have some talent around him. Cade Klubnik, I think, is going to be a good player.
Absolutely. Yes. Offensive line, running game. Won't have everything on his shoulders.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that running game is going to be legit next year, especially with the left tackle coming back.
Yeah.
We're talking about Penn State, right? Is who we're talking about? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When that kid announced he was coming back, like, okay, Penn State's going to be decent next year. You know what I mean? Like on offense. So yeah, it really is. And like you said, Sean, there's kids who didn't start this year that are going to be that guy next year.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be fun. Here's a kid that a lot of people may not want to talk about, Connor Wegman at Texas A&M.
That's a good call. Looked pretty good at the end of the year.
Well, I loved him coming out of high school. He was my, I think, number 3 quarterback in that class, 2 or 3 quarterback in that class. I loved that kid. The question is the thing is, I didn't think the fit made sense for him to go to Texas A&M at the time, because I'm like, Jimbo is notorious for taking athletic quarterbacks and trying to turn them into pocket passers because that's all he knows.
Mm-hmm.
I never thought that the kid he had before was like a great player, right? I was never one of those people that was kind of, I wasn't one of those Kellen Mond is a great talent people. But I also knew that Kellen Mond was never used the way he should have been used. Now, I'm not saying he's not a guy that can throw the football, but you tried to turn him into a pocket passer because that's who Jimbo is. Bobby Petrino showed the whole world that he can take a run throw kid and turn him into a pretty darn good player. Because one of the things about Lamar Jackson that people did not, I've said this, they don't give him enough credit for in college. Lamar Jackson put up some really good numbers as a passer under Bobby Petrino. So let's not forget, Bobby Petrino has developed a Heisman Trophy quarterback in recent seasons. And Lamar threw for over 7,000 yards in his 2 years as a starter, Sean. Or his 2 non-freshman years as a starter. His sophomore and junior season, he threw for over 7,000 yards and almost 60 touchdowns, despite being a guy that made a lot of plays. Now, Connor Wegman is not Lamar Jackson. The point is this, however, he has shown he can take a guy that's got ability as a passer and use that while also saying, but this kid can do some stuff with his legs, and we're going to use that too. That's something that Jimbo has never been able to do, ever been able to do. He's always like, this is what I know, and this is what I'm going to do. Right? That was my only criticism I ever had of Steve Spurrier, is Steve Spurrier could only coach one type of quarterback. And they were all going to have the same throwing motion. They were going to hold the ball back here. They were going to have the same throwing motion. He wanted cookie cutters at quarterback. And that's Jimbo. Well, Jimbo ain't Steve Spurrier. You know what I'm saying? Steve can get away with that because he's Steve Spurrier.
Yeah.
Jimbo's not Steve Spurrier. Bobby Petrino, if allowed to run his offense, is going to get production out of Connor Wegman. Now, is it this year or is it next year? I have a feeling we may be talking about him next year.
Yeah.
But I'm not sleeping on him for this year either, Sean. And so I'm telling you, man, I'm excited. And we didn't talk about Will Rogers because he's a system guy. I mean, that's that, like, you know, that. Oh, Ryan brought up a guy yesterday too, is Cameron Ward, the kid,
Washington
the transfer.
State.
He's coming back next year for a 5th year. That's another guy. So that Ryan thinks is going to make a jump, and I'm got my eye on him, right? And so it's going to be interesting, man. It's going to be very interesting. This is going to be a fun year. I don't know how many of these guys are high NFL draft picks, but I don't care.
That's a good call by Ryan, because he reminds me of Jordan Travis when I mentioned him at Notre Dame Stadium. I watched him at the Coliseum when they were just USC was the better team, but he kept competing. He just kept coming at USC. So I like that call. I love kids like that.
Here's my thing about Cameron Ward, Ryan, or Sean, and where I like Ryan's.
I've been Vince and Ryan today.
I know, right? Well, one of your Sean's was Sean Stiers. You just didn't recognize it because it sounds the same. The thing about Cameron Ward too is why I don't buy into the hype of the FCS kids coming to Power 5, because these kids come for 1 year and the jump is too great.
Yeah.
You're going from a level where you can make throws you just can't make and we don't. That's what I said. Name me a quarterback that's gone either from the group of 5 level or the FCS level, has transferred to Division I team, a group of Power 5 team, and been a dude in year 1. And I still can't think of one. I know there's been one, but I can't think of one. Most of the transfers that have been impact players are guys that transferred from one Power 5 school to another Power 5 school. Here's the thing about Cameron Ward, though. He now has that year under his belt of getting caught up to the speed of the Pac-12. So now he goes into next year and he's not making that jump from everything happens faster, the windows are tighter and all that kind of stuff. And so you're going to start to see from that alone that jump in production.
Yeah.
In my opinion. So I think you're both onto something. I think that's where I think Cam Ward could be a guy that surprises people, because he did get that adjustment year out of a system.
Yeah.
Where a lot of those kids don't get that. So I thought it was very smart of him to come back for another year, because like you said, his numbers weren't bad, Sean. I mean, he threw for 3,200 yards and 23 touchdowns and 9 interceptions.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of they had to throw a lot of passes to get there. You know, and it wasn't super efficient. But next year, it's going to look a lot better. And I think anyway.
Yeah.
So I could see that. It's going to be this is part of the reason I'm excited about college football this year, Sean, is there's a lot of quarterbacks that have a chance to be good, good players.
Yeah.
And I'm really looking forward to see how those guys break out.
Yeah.
I really am.
Especially with the last year of the 4-team college playoff.
Right.
There are so many questions.
Yeah.
Even at the big teams. Like, who's going to quarterback for Georgia? Who's going to quarterback for Alabama?
Sean, right there. this whole conversation, we did not mention who the starting quarterback will be for Georgia or Alabama.
Nope.
Because I don't know. One of them's going to step up and make plays, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who is it going to be?
Who is it going to be?
Right. Because there's not a lot of quarterback transfers left, right? The kid from
No.
Vanderbilt, I think, is still in the market, right? But he's not that guy.
Yeah, he's not that guy.
So
maybe somebody jumps in after the spring.
Right. But then that guy misses spring ball.
Yeah.
Right. And who would that be? It's not going to be an impact player that's going to,
No.
it's not going to be Michael Pratt. It's not going to be, you know what it'd have to be? It'd have to be somebody that transferred now that got beat out, or a guy that they thought was going to start that got beat out. Like let's just say, for example, I got no intel. This is just me making an example because I'm just, Driscoll said that.
Yeah.
All right. Let's just say hypothetically that Devin Brown beats out Kyle McCord.
Mm-hmm.
There's some schools that I'd be like, hey,
yeah,
give me Kyle McCord. You know what I mean? It could be a situation where after the spring, you've got other quarterbacks that could be in this conversation. So it's going to be really, and I'm trying to kind of go through who else got transfers this year. But there's going to be a lot of guys that are going to have chances to make that move. And so I'm excited. I'm telling y'all, I'm really excited to watch college football. I mean, I'm always excited to watch college football, right? But especially this year because I just feel like quarterback play in college football this year is going to be a lot of fun.